When I first moved into the apartment with Daniel, I assumed our arrangement would be nothing more than practical convenience. Two young men splitting rent, sharing groceries, and occasionally drinking a beer together on the couch, it seemed straightforward. Daniel was the kind of man who seemed born comfortable in his own skin. Easy laugh, broad shoulders, a smile that disarms strangers. He had a girlfriend named Emily, a steady relationship that framed him as solid, reliable, and most importantly, straight. I, on the other hand, carried a secret with careful precision. Being gay wasn't something I broadcast. A few close friends knew, but around Daniel I kept it buried. He was kind, yes, but his world was a different one built on locker room camaraderie, casual talk about sports, and updates about Emily's weekend visits. My attraction to men had no place in that space, or so I thought. Still, I noticed him. More than I wanted to admit, I noticed him. The way he stretched across the sofa after a long day, the way his laugh filled the kitchen when I burned dinner, the way his hand would brush mine when we both reached for the remote. Tiny moments that shouldn't matter lodged themselves in me, unshakable reminders of what I couldn't have. I told myself it was harmless admiration, a private longing that would fade with time. The night that changed everything began like any other. We ordered takeout, watched some forgettable comedy, and poured ourselves a few drinks. Daniel had a talent for drawing me out of silence, for nudging me past the walls I usually kept high. Somewhere between laughter and another pour of whiskey, he leaned back and asked, "You ever been in love? Like really in love?" The question hit harder than it should have. I hesitated, searching for a safe answer, but the alcohol loosened my guard. Once, I admitted quietly. Didn't end well. Daniel tilted his head, curiosity sharpening his expression. "With a girl?" The air shifted. My heart thudded like a warning drum. I could have lied, brushed it off, but instead I found myself saying, "No, with a guy." The silence that followed stretched tight, suffocating. I braced myself for awkwardness, maybe even rejection. Daniel blinked, as though recalibrating, but to my shock, a smile tugged at his lips. "Huh," he said softly. "You've never mentioned that before." "I don't usually," I confessed, voice low. "Not everyone takes it well." Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on me, with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Well, I don't care. You're still you. Honestly, I respect you for telling me." Relief washed over me, but underneath it was something else, something sharper. His acceptance felt too warm, too personal, as if he wasn't just tolerant, but curious. He didn't retreat. He leaned closer, his tone gentler than I had ever heard it. "Must have been tough, keeping that to yourself." I shrugged, trying to mask the flutter in my chest. "You get used to it." Our conversation deepened from there, circling around identity, fear, and trust. Daniel admitted he'd never really thought about men in that way, but he also confessed something that made my pulse quicken. "I've always felt comfortable with you. Safer, I guess. Like I can be myself without worrying what you'll think." The honesty in his voice was disarming. For the first time since I'd known him, there was no joking edge, no playful bravado. Just raw sincerity. The gap between us on the couch seemed to shrink without either of us moving. When midnight crept in, I suggested we call it night. Daniel hesitated, then surprised me with, "Mind if I crash in here? Don't feel like heading to my room." His tone was casual, almost careless, but the request pressed against the fragile boundary of our friendship. I nodded, though my throat was dry. He stretched out beside me on the couch, close enough that our shoulders touched. Neither of us spoke. The glow of the television washed over his face, highlighting the calm, unbothered ease of a man who didn't see the storm unraveling inside me. That night ended without a kiss, without a single overt move, yet everything had changed. I lay awake long after his breathing steadied, acutely aware of the warmth of his body so close to mine. The secret I had guarded for so long was no longer mine alone, and the line between us had blurred in ways I couldn't reverse. And though nothing had happened, yet I knew something inevitable had begun. Daniel stayed on the couch again the following night. At first, I told myself it was coincidence, maybe laziness after another long evening, but When it became a pattern, when his footsteps began to lead to my side of the apartment instead of his bedroom, I knew it was something more. "Your couch is too damn comfortable," he joked one evening, stretching across it like a king in his throne. But I noticed the truth in the way his eyes lingered on me, in how he angled his body closer when we talked. For me, every shared night carried a paradox: the sweetness of being chosen over distance, and the sting of knowing Emily existed just outside the frame of our private world. He spoke of her less and less, as though she were fading from relevance, yet she remained the invisible barrier I couldn't ignore. The intimacy between us grew in increments, quiet and unspoken. Sometimes his hand would brush mine as he reached for his drink. Sometimes his knee would press against mine, and he wouldn't move it away. At first, I convinced myself it was accidental, but repetition stripped that illusion away. These were deliberate touches designed to test, to explore. One night, after too much wine, we sat shoulder to shoulder, the silence between us heavier than words. Daniel exhaled slowly, then murmured, "You ever wonder why I keep ending up in here?" I swallowed, my throat dry. "I do." He smirked faintly, but didn't look at me. "It feels different, being here with you, like I can breathe easier." I wanted to ask what that meant, to press him until he admitted what both of us already felt, but fear kept me still. The danger of hearing the wrong answer outweighed my craving for clarity. As the nights accumulated, temptation gnawed at me. I lay awake listening to his steady breathing beside me, my body alive with the ache of proximity. I told myself I couldn't be the one to break the boundary, that if something happened, it had to come from him. Still, my thoughts betrayed me. I imagined his lips, his hands, the warmth of his skin against mine. Every fantasy only deepened the torment of restraint. The first breach came subtly. Daniel had fallen asleep on my bed this time, claiming the couch was too cramped for his 6-foot frame. The moonlight slanted across his face, softening his features, and for a moment I allowed myself to simply look. Then, as if sensing my gaze, he shifted, rolling toward me. His hand landed on my chest, heavy with sleep, but when his fingers curled slightly, I knew it wasn't an accident. I froze, unsure whether to push him away or lean into it. His breathing stayed even, but the weight of his hand remained a silent declaration. My heart thundered so loudly I feared it would wake him. The next morning he said nothing about it. Instead, he carried on as though nothing unusual had passed between us, except for the glint in his eyes when they met mine, an unspoken acknowledgement that we were both aware. From that moment, the boundaries dissolved quickly. He began staying closer, letting his arm drape over my shoulder during conversations, resting his hand against my thigh, as though it belonged there. These gestures were tender, deliberate, and increasingly impossible to interpret as platonic. It was one of those late nights when the dam finally broke. We had been talking about childhood, about the people we used to be, when Daniel suddenly fell quiet. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't decipher, half fear, half longing. Then, without a word, he leaned in and kissed me. The kiss was tentative at first, as if he were testing not just me, but himself. But when I didn't pull away, when I kissed him back, the hesitation melted. His hand cupped my face, his lips pressed harder against mine, and the months of tension erupted into a dizzying rush of release. When we finally parted, both breathless, he whispered, "I don't know what I'm doing." Neither did I. All I knew was that a line had been crossed, and there would be no going back. That night, we didn't talk about Emily, nor about the consequences waiting outside our door. All that mattered was the heat between us, the undeniable pull neither of us could resist. As dawn crept in, Daniel lay with his arm around me, his head on my shoulder, as though it was the most natural thing in the world. But even in that tender stillness, a warning pulsed in my chest. Desire had finally won, and the price would not be small. What began as stolen moments quickly evolved into a double life. By day, Daniel carried on with Emily as though nothing had changed. He answered her calls, made plans for the weekends, and posted smiling photos of them together. By night, he came to me, our apartment turned into a sanctuary for the secret we couldn't name, a place where we gave in to temptation with reckless devotion. For a time, I convinced myself it could last. Each night, he chose me. Each touch and kiss whispered the possibility that what we had was more than fleeting indulgence. Yet beneath the euphoria, guilt spread like cracks in glass. I was not blind. I knew every embrace was stolen, every laugh at midnight was borrowed against the trust of a woman who had no idea what was unraveling behind closed doors. Daniel struggled, though he rarely admitted it. Some nights he would hold me tightly, whispering fragments of feelings he didn't understand. "You make me feel alive. I can't stop thinking about you." Other nights, he grew distant, retreating into silence, as though ashamed of the same words that had poured so easily before. I could see the war within him, his loyalty to Emily clashing against the gravity that kept pulling him into my arms. It was inevitable that the outside world would intrude. Emily began to notice. She sent messages late into the night that went unanswered, called when his phone lay forgotten on the counter while he pressed his lips against my skin. Once I heard her voice through the speaker, sharp with suspicion. "Why don't you come over anymore? Why are you always with him?" Daniel's reply was clumsy, excuses stitched together with threads too thin to hold. The tension built until it could no longer be ignored. One evening, after another quiet dinner together, Daniel dropped heavily onto the couch, his head in his hands. "I can't keep doing this," he muttered, voice raw. Fear clawed at my chest. "Doing what?" "This." His eyes lifted, brimming with conflict, living two lives, pretending everything's fine with Emily when I'm here every night with you. He paused, swallowing hard. "I don't even know who I am anymore." The confession was a blade that cut in two directions. On one hand, it was the honesty I'd been waiting for. On the other, it carried the weight of an ending I didn't want to face. "Then choose," I said softly, though my voice trembled. Daniel shook his head, frustration etched into his features. "It's not that simple. I care about her. I built years with her. But with you, it's different. It feels real in a way I can't explain." His words faltered, his hands tightening into fists. And I'm terrified of what that means. I wanted to beg him to stay, to let the nights we shared outweigh the years he had with her. But even as the urge rose in me, I knew it would be selfish. Love born from infidelity carried a cost neither of us was prepared to pay. The final night was quiet, almost tender in its inevitability. We lay together, our bodies entwined, our breaths sinking in the dark. There were no promises, no illusions of a future. Only the bittersweet awareness that dawn would sever what we had built in secret. Daniel kissed me softly, lingering as though memorizing the taste, and whispered, "I'll never forget this." When morning came, he dressed without meeting my eyes. His goodbye was muted, heavy with things unsaid. The door closed behind him, and with it, the fragile world we had created dissolved. In the days that followed, the apartment felt unbearably empty. The couch where we laughed, the bed where we tangled ourselves together, every corner echoed with memory. I told myself I had lost nothing, that it was better this way, but the ache in my chest betrayed me. And yet, amid the pain, there was clarity. What we shared had not been a mistake. It was a truth too sharp to ignore. Daniel may have returned to Emily, but he had also uncovered a side of himself he could never unlearn. And I, left with both the wound and the memory, understood that desire, once awakened, could never again be silenced. It was not the ending I dreamed of, but it was real. And sometimes, reality is the only story left to tell. The silence Daniel left behind was deafening. For days, the apartment felt like a hollow shell, a stage after the actors had abandoned their roles. His toothbrush remained in the bathroom, his jacket still draped over the chair by the door, but his presence, his laughter, his warmth, the subtle gravity he carried, was gone. I had imagined the pain of losing him, but reality was sharper, more merciless. I tried to slip back into routine, cooking for one, watching shows in solitude, convincing myself the emptiness would dull with time. Yet each night, When I lay in the bed where he once slept, I felt the indentation where his body used to be, memory blurred with longing, and longing blurred with regret, until I couldn't tell which one weighed heavier. It would have been easier if he had vanished completely, if I had been spared the reminder that he still existed in my orbit. But Daniel wasn't gone. He came back in fragments. A text about the rent, a quick stop to grab his mail, a fleeting smile that betrayed more than either of us dared to say. Each encounter reopened the wound, proof that his choice hadn't erased what we shared. It had only buried it under the pretense of normalcy. One afternoon, I found him at the apartment unexpectedly. He was standing in the kitchen, holding a mug of coffee as if nothing had changed. For a moment, it felt like the old days, until I noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes avoided mine. "How are you?" he asked, the word strained. I wanted to answer, honestly, that I was unraveling without him, that I replayed our nights together until they consumed me, but I forced a smile. "I'm fine." His jaw tightened, and he set the mug down harder than necessary. "You don't have to lie." Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything unspoken. Finally, he sighed. "I miss it. I miss you." The confession was both balm and blade. "Then why aren't you here?" I whispered. Daniel's expression crumbled. "Because I can't. I don't know who I am if I leave Emily. I don't know how to face the world if I admit what I feel for you." The honesty in his voice was devastating. It wasn't rejection, it was fear. Fear of labels, fear of loss, fear of stepping into a truth that would rewrite everything he thought he knew about himself. I wanted to close the distance between us, to kiss away his doubt and anchor him to me. But instead, I nodded. "Then we're stuck in the in-between. You with her, me with this emptiness." He looked at me then, eyes glassy, and for the first time, I realized we were both trapped, not just by circumstance, but by the parts of ourselves we couldn't yet face. That night after he left, I sat in the quiet and understood something that had eluded me before. Infidelity isn't just betrayal of another person, it's a betrayal of one's own truth. Daniel had betrayed Emily, yes, but he had also betrayed himself by refusing to confront the depth of what we shared. And in staying, in accepting the fragments he offered, I had betrayed myself too. The realization was harsh but necessary. I could not keep waiting for him to choose me. To love someone who hid behind fear was to accept half of a life, half of a heart. And so I made a decision. Not to erase him, because that would be impossible, but to let go of the illusion that we had a future. What we shared would remain a secret etched into memory, beautiful and broken, but it could not define me any longer. As I turned off the light that night, I felt both hollow and strangely free. Love had come disguised as comfort, then revealed itself as temptation, and finally taught me the hardest lesson of all. Some desires are meant to shape us, not to stay with us. And though Daniel's shadow would linger, I knew I had to step forward, even if it meant walking alone.